up, everyone? Thank you for joining us. Welcome to Hall of Flowers Core Conversations. I'm Lincoln Barnett, and yeah, we're going to get it going. So our next conversation is educating the consumer on social equity, followed by a Q&A. There's a microphone right here with some white tape to line up and be COVID safe. So without further ado, please help me give a warm welcome to our moderator, Mary Pryor of Canaclusive, and our speakers, Timeka Drew of Bico and Michelle Mendoza of Sweet Flower.
I'm going to be the first moderator to be barefoot on stage during Hall of Flowers. No one is going to judge me for that because my feet are not ashy. And I just want to ground myself. It's been a lot of walking and a lot of talking. How's everybody doing? How's everybody breathing their hot weed breath into their own mask? All right. Everyone's breath is funky at this point. Don't lie. Hopefully you're drinking water to stay hydrated. Thank you for joining us. This is a conversation about what should be everyone's favorite topic, but it's always something that we still have to educate and talk to people about, which is the value of understanding equity, cannabis equity in the space, how you can be active, what it really means. And these two individuals here are doing what they can where they can, given where they are as founders and as persons who are able to make decisions to support efforts in equity. So shout out to Michelle and Timeka. Thank you for your time, and thank you to Hall of Flowers for hosting this conversation. Michelle, if you wouldn't mind giving a short intro to yourself, and Timeka, I'll let you go next.
Hello, everybody. I'm the director of buying for Sweet Flower. For those of that don't know, we're a retail boutique network in Southern California. Currently 4 locations, soon to be opening 2 more this year. So fast tracked and lots to do. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Timeka Drew. I'm the founder and CEO of Bico Flower. We are a Los Angeles-based social equity brand, women-owned. We just launched in February. And I'm also the co-founder of our academy. Shout out to Hillary Yu, co-founder, which is a nonprofit which supports social equity and underrepresented entrepreneurs in the cannabis industry.
And where is your booth located, by the way?
We are located at C239 over in the C building. Come check us out. Say hello. We would love to see you.
No problem. Glad I could help. Let's get really to the facts.
Mary.
How do you clarify or talk about equity with people who ask, what is it? And I'll just let you kick that off, Timeka.
Well, and I don't know if you're talking specifically about equity versus kind of social equity as the way we define it in the cannabis space. But when we're talking about equity in cannabis, we're talking about allowing for people who have been disproportionately impacted to be able to have a way to be able to participate in the space in all ways. And that's not just to purchase and consume from large corporations, but that's also to hold those licenses, to be able to produce the products, to be able to own the retail locations that sell the products, to be a part of the entire industry that we helped build from the legacy days, the traditional days, the medical days, and continuing now into the regulated market.
And when we talk about what that means in terms of this event, right, from a retail perspective, and Michelle, I'll let you jump in here, what are ways that you've been, actively part of, making space for equity brands, understanding that an equity brand, a brand period is a brand, and it's not like there's a different level of judgment or anything like that in terms of that word being utilized to personify a brand in the space. What has Sweet Flower been doing actively with that, and just literally say how many brands you've been circulating on your shelves as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. Just to echo a little what Timeka just said, having my tenure in this industry spent on the retail side, I have a really, I think, intimate look at what the landscape of cannabis looks like in our state, but more importantly, what it doesn't look like. And so I think from that lens, that's kind of how I view day to day with Sweet Flower and prior to Sweet Flower. And I really see, you know, a place of, I think, a pivotal place in the industry for retailers, because we really do have a power to shed light, to bring visibility, to share our platform, as you said, make space on our shelves for brands that represent our communities. It is my own personal belief that, you know, cannabis can and should be, you know, an engine for economic empowerment, and that begins in our communities. And so if our communities in a very diverse state are not represented inside of our stores, from the people to the products, we have a problem. And so I think that's kind of how I view it. And so with Sweet Flower specifically, it is our mission to really make sure that we are doing our part in bringing visibility to brands, telling their story. Biko is one of the brands we carry. Timeka's story is incredible. And I think that is incredibly important, to be able to highlight that, to amplify it, to push it out there in any way we can. And so that's what we're doing. So I would say, I think the industry standard right now is about 2% of brands on the shelves are from BIPOC owned brands. We're currently at 15%. But for me, that's not good enough. So the mission is to keep increasing it.
And I just want to kind of like help people understand, like, it's not like mission impossible to connect with brands that are owned by melanated communities. It's not hard. So let's talk about that, because Timeka, I know a lot of the conversations you have around explaining this to the consumer is, oh, I don't know how to find Black people, or I don't know where to find anybody Mexican or Chicano in California that would be operating a cannabis brand. And a lot of that is not only hogwash, but can we just break down that horrible fake barrier and what it means to like understand community, understand the cultural nuance of cannabis, that it comes from the legacy market. It's not it's not illegal, it's not illicit. Like, can you just wrap that up and help people understand that?
Sure. And one thing I will say is, anyone that wants to know more about social equity or BIPOC founders and brands only need to visit Canaclusive to find an incredible list. And there are so many people in the space like Mary and Canaclusive doing the work to really inform consumers and retailers about, you know, how to work with a diverse group of folks. But to Mary's point, I mean, we've always been here. Personally, I'm a medical patient. So I've been a medical patient in California for over 20 years. I had a delivery service myself where I manufactured products for our patients. And when we transitioned into this new regulated space, now all of a sudden, folks who are able to source great flower, offer a service, make sure that they're offering clean medicine at a good price to the folks that they know, we're unable to do that in an easy way. And so through social equity and through equity laws, we've been able to kind of find ways to be able to get those licenses and prove that we're the people who were operating these businesses previously, we can operate these businesses now. It's just a matter of not having an incredible amount of red tape or an incredible amount of fees that are attached to the licenses and the abilities to make these products. And to make a brand, you don't need a license. All you need to do is work with licensed businesses. So anyone can actually have a brand. Any person of color can create a brand with partnerships. So it's also us understanding that all we need to do is have a will and have a passion, and we can definitely create anything that we want in this industry and not let people allow you to think that you have to have every single license in order to create your own brand.
So Michelle, there's literally like, no one can just walk up to Sweet Flower and be like, hey, I want to talk to Michelle, put this on the shelf, right? Like, there's none of that is really happening. So what does the outreach look like from your end? If, like, is it word of mouth, you find out about a brand? Is it through just like actually being in the community when you find out about brands? And like, what does that process look like in terms of what are the interfacing opportunities outside of this, which may be for some people really cost prohibitive, or for most people, cost prohibitive. I don't know. It's a pandemic. I don't know where everybody's money is at. But, can you talk a bit about how people connect with distributors in this space coming from the equity side?
Yeah, so the process right now looks like, well, let me back it up really fast. I think that I have always been very curious in knowing what's new in this industry when it comes to brands. So I think for me specifically, curating a menu is what I love doing. And I know that sounds weird, but there really is a lot of thought that goes into it, because it's not just about the top brands, it's about where we sit in a geographical region, and is there a demand for certain products, and our brand ourselves for Sweet Flower, who is the audience that we are talking to, but more importantly, who are we not talking to, and that's who I want to reach too. And so from that perspective is how I kind of build our entire portfolio of brands that we carry. And I'm always looking for what's new. And so if there's something I'm like, I need this price point, this particular product, this form factor, I could have been a detective in another lifetime, because I really do love searching for things. So I think I'll scour social media, I'll scour the internet. And so I'll say, I know you didn't ask this part of the question, but I will say having a digital footprint for a brand is really important, because if I can't find you that way, and you're not at a show like this, or on a secret list that exists somewhere, it's really tough to find a brand and know that that's who you are. So that's just kind of a sidebar there. But in addition to that, the process looks like this. You have a brand, you have a price sheet, you have information about your brand story is important on there. You walk into a Sweet Flower store, what they're going to do is they're going to say, okay, we're not going to give you Michelle's phone number. Please don't call me, because I get a lot of phone calls, but an email address. Send me all of that information. Send me the synopsis of who you are, the important information you want me to know about your brand that's going to catch my attention, because that's really important. I get hundreds of emails a day, and I really quickly scan them to see, like, it's ranking. It's what is imminent I have to answer right now versus what am I looking for. And I do earmark things in my brain, and I come back to them later. And sometimes it takes me a while, but that is the route with which you can visually get your product in front of me brand-wise, if I didn't already seek you out. Send me an email. Send me something about yourself, about your brand, because that really is what grabs me immediately. If it's a need we have, if you're social equity, that's all important information I want to know right up front. Tell me a little bit about you. And so that's kind of the route to. And I will say that working with our academy has also brought some brands into my perspective, and that's been a really great way to do it, and also with Can Inclusive. So those are the networks right now. It's send me an email, come into a store, start networking. It's important to do, and that's really how it's done right now.
What are the average startup costs someone is looking at when they're like, I'm going to make a brand just to get to that point? And then, like, how much marketing have you had to kind of create with, like, a startup budget, given that you're, like, a team of how many people, Timeka?
We're just a very small team. We're a team of about 3 people right now. We're a family-run business, so I'm the CEO. My husband is the COO. We do all of our own sourcing. But, a lot of what is hard to start to understand is understanding supply chain relationships. When you are first building a brand, are you going to be able to find a distributor or a manufacturer that might be able to work on spec with you? If you have purchase orders, perhaps they can get you that product, get it sold through, and then be able to compensate you afterwards for what's left over. So it's just a matter of figuring out interesting ways to really get things started, and also being able to get on people's shelves without having to kind of pay to play. That's what a lot of people don't realize. It's really tough to get on retailer shelves these days without having a large marketing a budget. And oftentimes when you're a small startup, no matter if you're social equity, no matter what kind of a small startup you are in cannabis, you might not have that budget. So having, pathways that we're able to have certain carousels or certain ways that they might be able to have product that they're lifting up from women-owned or Black-owned or Indigenous-owned brands that we don't have to pay, people can find out about us, and that helps us get the word out that way and not be 100% prohibitive to be able to be carried in so many retailers or in direct-to-consumer platforms.
So how can entities outside of shelf space, Michelle, and you can jump in on this too, Timeka, given your work on the policy side, how can entities actually step into the ring if they want to be part of providing solutions or support for equity in cannabis? And there's a lot of different ways, so you two can divvy it up. I'll jump in too, but let's start with, like, if you're an entity, whether you're a distributor or a retailer or a major company with a lot of dollars, what does it look like just to think about ways that are not hard to, like, support equity in general?
Yeah, I think the major thing is being sensitive to budget that a lot of these startup brands have, and there is a need for brands, a diverse amount of brands in our industry. And so if the biggest barrier are the fees that they're paying up front to enter, that's a problem. And so I think if you're a distributor, if you're a retailer, if you're supply chain, there should be some consideration about that. And I know a lot of distributors have, obviously costs for logistics and whatnot. It's an expensive business. But I do think that if we're going to change this, we have to figure out a solution for that. And it has to be equal across the board, in a sense, from supply chain to distribution and how it enters retail. So, look, I think as my part as a retailer, I really want to make sure, and we are conscious of budget when it comes to marketing. And I always ask, for one of the first questions I ask a brand is, do you have a go-to-market strategy? Which means, have you thought through, once you actually enter the market, what is the plan for you to help drive traffic? Because the worst thing I think you can do is, make it to a retailer and then let it sit there and it doesn't move. And that doesn't help out the brand or the retailer. And so I think the point is to build momentum and to keep it going, to join forces, to be able to amplify and to get the message out there and bring more visibility to the brand itself. So that is our responsibility as a retailer, and that's why we love to share our platform with brands. I also want to know the brand has a strategy on their end. I don't care how small it is. It's a strategy, and it's a relentlessness to succeed. And whether that's you on social media talking about your brand and where to get it every day, that's great. That's great. That helps out tremendously. So those are small things you can do along the way. I just want to say that we do not charge for shelf space. I have adamantly been against that from day one. I don't see the benefit of it. So I'll just turn it over to you on that.
Well, and one thing that I'll add to that, and I that is the biggest thing, obviously, is being sensitive to cost. And I think every single entity in the space has education and support that they could be offering brands that could have a little bit of mentorship, that could learn a little bit more about ways that they could be cutting their costs and making their business more efficient. That's something that through our academy, there's been so many amazing actors in the space from all different corners of the industry offering their education and support through teach-ins and skill shares. That's been incredibly helpful to entrepreneurs really trying to start their business, but also really opening up their networks to help and engage folks that are just really trying to get an edge in the industry. So let's say you're a distribution channel, perhaps you're willing to allow your head of sales to have a half an hour call to make some introductions between a new women-led brand that maybe needs a little bit of support getting into some new retail locations because they don't have a sales team yet. There are little ways that can be very supportive and really launch a brand's trajectory by just sharing networks and sharing information, which is something that I think is the number one thing that BIPOC entrepreneurs lack in the space, is a real network that is invested and involved in their continued success as they move through the space.
Do you have any really big no's of, like, this is not the thing that is helping drive equity in the space that you're seeing a lot of people do, Timeka? It's your chance to shine.
There are so many no's, Mary.
Yeah, I
I don't know if you want me to just start talking
audience so that they don't do it. Thank you so much.
Well, I mean, one of the things that I will speak on, because it's something that everybody's talking about so much recently, are social equity retail licenses. We're
Oh my
seeing
gosh,
it
that's exactly what I want you to talk about.
throughout the country, right? We have these social equity retail licenses. I'm actually the holder of one of these social equity retail licenses in Los Angeles. So I've been kind of in the middle of hearing about everything that's happening there. And one of the really dangerous things that's happening in our industry right now is this valuation of social equity licenses as just inherently less valuable than licenses that are not, obtained through a social equity regulatory structure. And this is happening throughout the country. So if somebody tells you, hey, I've got $500,000 for you and I want to take 49% of your license, and you don't want to take that deal. That's going to be one tip that I want to give you, because a $1 million valuation for our retail cannabis licenses in this industry is just unacceptable. So if we accept it, they're going to say, hey, this is what we've decided and this is what this community has accepted, and they should be lucky that they have it, right? That they have this opportunity. And we really need to be educating and re-engaging that conversation and kind of standing strong together on the fact that they can't just undervalue what we do simply because of who we are, the color of our skin, and our backgrounds. And that's just one. We'll save the others for a different panel.
Literally about an hour ago, Timeka was talking about following the rules, and I was like, I literally gave her the most anti-rule following pep talk at her own booth.
Mentor Mary said, I've taught you something today. It's don't follow the rules. We did a high five about it all. But that's also the problem with us, right? Is that we feel every single rule that is set out, we follow it because we're used to the fact that when we don't follow the rules, different things happen to us, right? That's why there are so many of us that are formerly incarcerated for this plant when, this is a disproportionate impact, and it's similar within this industry, right? I can't tell you how many folks in an executive position have made jokes about social equity, indicating now we're going to have to learn how to play basketball if we want to make these business deals, right? Now we're going to have to learn to rap if we want to make social equity deals. And there's just an entire ha funny, we're going to take advantage of what they've set up. And it's our turn to really show them, hey, we've always been here. We've been the ones running this industry we brought in, legalization from our LGBTQ community, forcing medical legalization to, the fact that we've been yelling and screaming about prison reform and abolition from the very beginning of all of this. This is all a slavery conversation is what we're having right now. We don't always want to call it that, but it's a lot of what we're talking about. We're talking about land rights. We're talking about, what we're allowed to do, who's allowed to have ownership, who's allowed to make wealth and redistribute it back into their communities. And this is the time where we're saying we're allowed and we've regulated it to happen. And we also need everybody to kind of come together to make sure we can make this revolution real.
So again, yes. So we're gonna, thumbs up. Okay, I was perfect timing. If you want to come up here and ask if your social equity plan is a good idea or a bad idea to this live panel of people that'll be like, bitch, what the fuck are you thinking? Please come on up if you have a question, if you have a concern, if you want to talk about your day. All right, hi.
I definitely don't want to talk about my day, but
okay.
I have a question. First, I want to say thank you for this panel. Love our academy. Love everything you guys do. Thank you for just getting more people of color into the space. My question is actually kind of non-entrepreneurial. I think so many times we do want, people of color to start their own businesses, which I'm all for. But, a lot of the time standing up that business, having it last isn't always sustainable. So to the three of you, how would you, explain the best ways for people of color to get an opportunity in this business where they can actually, make a career of it and sustain it? Because let's be honest, not everyone has the entrepreneurial spirit. It takes a special kind of person to have that daily grind of standing up a business. But there's obviously not enough people of color overall in leadership positions in the industry and just honestly the industry as a whole.
Yeah.
So how do we make sure that there's more people who look like us?
I just want to say, I know white guys losing their shirt in cannabis. So it's not really anything that has to do with race or gender, right? I just think that it's expensive in certain markets. It's expensive in certain municipalities. Things can be different than what are happening in different states. There's a lot of how things are operating elsewhere. And as on the Canaclusive side, I think that we don't really, if we're going to say, okay, we want more melanated communities involved in executive and board levels, then why aren't you hiring and targeting melanated communities for those types of opportunities to occur? And I try to use the term melanated because I think the term BIPOC is bullshit. I don't know why we use it. So I've been using the term melanated to also include our Asian, South Asian, Pacific Islander, Indigenous of all foreign brothers and sisters, because a lot of what I've observed in this space is that, especially with certain things that have happened this year, like all the dangers that are happening in now what we call Afghanistan, and the fact that the plant actually came from Afghan roots, as we call it that, is really interesting. But I just want to clarify, like, my use of the term melanated. I think a lot of people do not know what this industry is made of. They don't know that you exist in your role. They don't know that I could be a marketing manager, a marketing director. All you're seeing visually is Snoop got a brand, Snoop got some shirts, Snoop was on a dispensary. No, he just has a really good licensing and IP deal that makes this shit amazing. But when all you see is, I just want a dispensary, I should own a dispensary, I don't own a dispensary, and you don't know about 280E, you don't know that 40 to 70% of your money is going back in cash to the government, you don't know that California could change a rule tomorrow and all of your packaging and stuff has to change along with the brand that you might have brought in. If they don't change, you got to take them off the shelves. They don't know that there's not a lot of insurance plans that will keep you as an insured buyer or an insured person in the business. They don't know that a lot of this is money in the air in the space, right? So if you don't explain or show, yo, I created an ancillary business where I work with plant-touching brands. Yo, I created a nonprofit with my friends to help support our academy and other equity businesses. None of those are plant-touching, although I'm a plant-touching like holder on equity side, on the hemp side. People don't know about these opportunities. So if we're not mainstreaming the conversation, we're always just gonna be left with these really stupid, not well thought out, not equitable, not really well designed social media. Like if you were here before, there's a lot of things connected to how we market things that are good for inclusion and how we don't, right? It's a choice. Inclusion is a choice. I just want to make sure we're all here. And what I say to people that are like white and scared to have the conversation, no one up here is going to solve racism this year or by the time we die. That's not what the goal of being open to talk about equality and equity is. If you feel like that's what's on your back, you should let that go because no one's going to be able to do that, right? But inclusion is a choice. Intention and execution is the thing that matters the most in this space on that level. So when we talk about opportunities, we all kind of have to start doing it. Like we all just, on top of you running a business and doing this, and on top of you being part of a business and doing your thing and mine, there's still not enough people saying that opportunities exist outside of just being a plant-touching owner. Anybody else want to jump in?
Yeah, I mean, I think our most precious resource is what you're kind of alluding to, information. In this industry, information, a lot of it is still held secret. And I think if transparency existed, and this is, I'm just thinking out loud here now, from supply chain through distribution, through retail, the more we have mentorships at all of those levels and start sharing that information that actually could be workable in a way for you, so that you can have a career in cannabis and you know what to expect. There's so much to know about this industry. And the regulations don't make it easy to really, as Mary said, I mean, the next day it could change and now the business you've been building is no longer, compliant in a sense. So
yeah, and we don't really say that like everybody's affected by regulations,
right.
Compliance changes, funding. It is, however, more worse due to patriarchy and white supremacy when you are melanated or you just happen to be a woman, right? And so there's that. That's true. But yeah, like.
So the information sharing is specifically with the groups that have been harmed, the most harmed. I think that's incredibly important. Mentorship is important. I think, how else do you get opportunity? I mean, that's how it happens. So it's networking. But if you don't have access to those groups, how do you network into a group that you don't have access to? So I think those are all things that we can start to, I think at least, I mean, I do this with myself, look at myself, how can I help? How can I be of service? Aside from what we do in the retail setting, you know, my own time, how can I help there? And I think that's really what I look for in myself, is my own personal responsibility and how I can affect small changes and how that kind of transcends outward. So yeah, that's it.
Question, no more. Oh, we got it. Okay. Yeah?
Hello.
Hi.
So I was just wondering, and I'm also thinking and asking out loud right now. I have a feeling a lot of people in the room right now are here because they believe in inclusivity and social equity. But what I love to know from my conversations with businesses that don't have social equity maybe as their first priority, but more so as like the last thing they look at so they can tick that box. How does social equity actually affect the businesses? I want to be able to have a data-driven conversation with brands about, if all they care about is the money, then how can I convey that social equity is good business? Is there data to show that, like, from a retail perspective, that when we made this change, sales skyrocketed? So whether you care about social equity because you're a good person or not, it's a good idea regardless.
Yeah. I personally know so on the Canacusa side, which we don't announce, we work with several MSOs and brands on inclusion strategy, political strategy, focusing on equity inclusion in certain key states. And we also work on creative. Two of those clients that we work with, Can, and another client that we work with, GTI, because of our work, we've been able to help them, one, increase their market share, one, increase the fact that they're viable and valuable for there to get more fundraising. Two, we've helped them make inclusive boards. Those things have given them a lot of brand equity and opportunity and a lot more spaces than just Black and Black, when we're talking LGBTQIA communities. We've been able to do a lot of mainstream recognition with them for entities that are not just like, you know, PR for, but like seeing them in the space and being available. So we have case studies that I could share with you that prove that from a data perspective for brand. And another thing that I think what a lot of retailers forget, and I can say this with affirmation because I do a lot of political strategy work in certain key states, is that when you listen to someone like myself or Timeka and we tell you equity is an issue, who's really the decision makers upon that are going to make that into the regulations. And then you're going to have to really show that you've been doing the work when you come into states like mine, like New York, because people are going to come to me to ask, have they really been doing the work or not? And then that's going to affect you maybe being able to even have a license, because they're going to backtrack that. And they're going to see how much that ROI really matters. And in every industry, whether it's CPG, beauty, whether it's tech, whether it's social media, Black and brown melanated conversations over-index no matter what. The over-index on social media alone for Black conversations is in the 30th percentile. So, you know, there's data from everything that shows that if you're inclusive, you have more reach into Latina communities. I mean, you have communities like Mexico, Uruguay, Argentina that are expanding, right? And a lot of those partnerships that are coming from like Canada or coming from other places, like, they're going to be like, what are you doing to make sure that you can do some work within the communities that you're in? Same thing for companies that are starting to come out east, right? If there's no work that's being done, you're angering an entire Black and Latino caucus in the East Coast, and we're going to be on your back than people are in the West. I mean, am I lying?
There's that carrot and there's that stick, Mary, you know, and the equity community is very serious about both of them. And one of the things that, you know, when we see large corporations as well coming into new states, wanting to undercut brands and, you know, come in, we're starting to ask questions like, why should this MSO, why should this large corporation be coming into the state and coming onto the shelves? Like, is there a reason? You know, and I think that that's going to be the question that consumers start asking as well. It's like, why? Is it really that it's $1 less? Is this going to be what drives the menus now? And I don't think it is. When Bico launched, we launched on the Ease Social Equity menu in February. The Ease Social Equity menu last year alone sold over $10 million, or over $2 million, worth of social equity products, which is incredibly impactful, just really showing that those products move. From when we first started on the Ease menu to now, we're ranked 39th on the Ease menu. So that just shows you that a Black-owned, women-owned brand on that menu, that I believe we are the only one right now representing on the social equity menu on Ease, can move products. So, these are just the kind of things that we do have to start looking at and taking seriously when we're talking about social equity brands that are owned by people of color, and if they can be successful in the space.
And I'll just add, that diversity on your menu for a retailer increases your brand's reach as the retailer. So, I said this in the very beginning. When I look at our menu and how we curate it, who is the audience we're talking to already by virtue of who we are as a brand? But who is the audience we're not talking to? Because that's who I want. I want to bring them in. So if my menu is not diverse, then I miss that opportunity. So that's really, I think, it. Data, we're really big on data. So we do look at all of that stuff.
Same. Next question. Hi.
Hi, hello to everybody in the panel. I apologize for arriving late. The gentleman before me asked me how much I make if I do something good. I'm 11 weeks out of beta. I have 457 dispensaries and 7,000 CBD stores that use my technology. I allocate 5% to social equity. It's a real 5%. All of that goes back in. And 5% to military families. I found growth happens because people appreciate somebody that appreciates them. Just if you want later on, we could talk about what we can do together.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. See, that's what I'm saying. That makes me smile. Yes, thank you. Please. Oh, hello. Yes, sir.
Yes. Thank you, ladies, for everything you do as far as social equity. The question that I have is, you mentioned earlier, education and knowledge is key to success in this industry, creating jobs and careers for people. How do you guys see, with the looming federal legalization that's going to happen, where retailers or distributors that only hold one license, how are they going to position themselves to compete against like Philip Morris, Anheuser-Busch, the big players that are going to come into the industry and try to undercut the people who have worked from the start to build these businesses?
I mean, that's a really good question. I think that one of the things that we're going to have to start doing is working together as well, right? And I think that that's a big part of what we're seeing in this industry right now. Just in the same way that M&As are happening like crazy, we're seeing collaborations happening with aligned partnerships and groups. And I think that's going to be the only way that we can survive. We've got to find the folks who are like us and be willing to build and find creative ways as well to really tackle some of these problems. And I think that like with marketing as well as advocacy, together we can figure out some ways to survive.
I think being really strategic on the fact that like you need to understand how regulations and regulators still need their own understanding of education in this business, so for why they should support certain sizes of retailers or understand what those challenges are is key. When I talk to political decision makers and when I talk to people that are in charge of like senators or assembly people, they have no idea what all these nuances mean when you have Anheuser-Busch coming into the room, when you have Amazon coming into the room, or when you have Sweet Flower coming into the room, or when you have someone else come. Like they just, it's, these are people that still think that like, if you see me consuming weed, I'm consuming LSD. Like there's a lot there. So I personally feel like the biggest opportunity is when you have to testify and break these things down in these rooms, in these state halls. That's been the thing that I focus on the most. And a lot of decision makers rely on me for that now. Like 2 of my friends are on the Office of Cannabis Management Board for New York. Those relationships are 6, 5, 7 years. So if they're gonna deep down be like, well, if you support this, then this must be it. What does this mean in terms of like how I need to support all these businesses so I can have people in my community actually do something in this space? That matters on the local ground too. So don't forget the political conversation that you can have with someone who really can like help you enlarge your territory instead of worrying about just the marketing part too. It's all together.
Well, and if I can just shout out, just to that point, shouting out SEOWA and Kika Keith and the work of that team who are really showing the power of the people on the ground when in LA, They gave 100 licenses. The process was flawed. The people pushed back. They sued the city, and they were able to get that ordinance changed, get more people to have retail licenses in LA. That's that stick. It's one of those things that we've seen over and over again in the equity community. When things go wrong, the people get together and they push, and they get changes made. So there is nothing that is hopeless as long as we're continuing to work together and letting the powers that be know how these things affect us.
Do we have any other questions? We do. Yes.
Hi, this is Claudia. I'm the CEO of Cali Bueno. We're a Latinx-owned company, and we're a micro business, so I had the pleasure of launching a brand, running a delivery service, and doing distribution for small craft farmers. So Michelle, I'm going to reach out to you. But my question is to you guys, can you speak on the importance of building systems? Because I've had to pull the parachute last year to get myself organized, and now I'm ready to relaunch, but I think systems are so crucial even to your valuation. Can you operate your business and can you scale? So any feedback on maybe tips I should look into as I scale my business?
Say that one more time.
Yeah, would you
Okay.
mind? Yeah,
Okay.
just
Sorry,
we
this
can
is Claudia with Cali Bueno. So
Yes.
my question is, how important is it to build systems internally for your company? Because I've had to pull back for a year, rearrange my company, and now I'm ready to launch. But how do you build systems to scale? And I'll put a little plug. I have a Latino who runs a Ciclotech, and they were part of the technology company that allowed us to put our systems together. And I really feel because of them, we are still here. We have all of our data in one place. We know who's getting paid, who owes us money, where the orders are going, how to track our orders. So that's kind of what I'm speaking on. Those systems that make you
You
have
have
a
like
heartbeat.
a multi-tiered question. That's why I think.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but just
No,
systems,
no.
yeah.
So there's no reason to say sorry for the way you asked your question.
Okay, great.
I'm just trying to consider if it's best for you to speak to someone more one-on-one, because your answer involves a lot of layers.
Yeah.
From what I'm hearing you say.
I'm actually happy to speak to you after this because I'm actually having a hard time hearing because of that fan.
Oh.
That's all I'm hearing is the fan. But I'm happy to have a conversation with you as soon as this wraps.
Yeah, right on.
If you have time.
Yeah, and it's kind of hard to speak too.
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure.
Are we done, y'all? Oh, we have a question from you. Okay.
From me.
Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm back. Okay. This I actually would love to hear because Michelle spoke on it earlier, so I would love to hear from each of your perspectives. So when it comes to brands and marketing materials, what are you looking for to set them apart from the rest of the brands that are on the market? And then do you think that it's important because it can lead to opportunities such as landing in larger dispensaries and networks? And also what kind of materials are like the key, I would say, top 3 that you're looking for? And should they be working on expanding those like portfolios of materials on their social platforms and their websites, etc.?
So the question is, what marketing materials do I like to see and are necessary?
Yes.
Yeah, no.
So what he's saying is like someone can't put it in a Ziploc bag and then give you
Right.
masking tape
right.
and then write it on the back of the Ziploc bag how many milligrams might be in it.
No, I think as detailed as you can be. How to use your product is important for consumer. But if you're just, for me personally, any brand we launch, the things I ask for are: do you have product shots of your product? Do you have product descriptions? Have you shared your brand story? Because those are really important elements that we want to be able to talk about. We want to be able to put them on our platform for our menu and for our delivery. All of those things are important. Any lifestyle photos that you've done to help with our social media, any reels. I know you do those. You're fantastic at those, so it's not a problem for you. Beyond that, I think any sort of takeaway you want a customer to have when they come into the store that really catches their eye, that's informational about your product, and specifically how to use it, because I think that's the biggest confusion, that once you walk out of the retail location and you get home and you're new to cannabis and you look at the product, what did I just buy? How do I even do this? So I think the way that you can walk a consumer through that step by step with the greatest amount of ease is only beneficial to you, the brand. And then is your social media, are your handles on there? Because let's say I love the product, I'm home. Now I want to tell all my friends and I can't remember how to find you. I don't want to go back to the store to find you, or maybe I'll go back in a month, but I want to tell my friends now, so those are things I think brands, I'd like for them to be able to think through that process. And once this gets into the consumer's hands, out of the retail, what does that look like? How do I then make and maximize that opportunity? Because word of mouth is incredibly important, and that's usually how people are recommending things. And in the store itself, you know, our florists, we call our bud tenders florists. They are the gateway to any information that you're going to pass on. So any information you want the consumer to have, make it easily digestible for them to be able to give your key points to anyone who walks through the door, because that is really how your product is being talked about as they're coming through the door.
Yeah, I think that's it, y'all. Hands of applause for everybody. You can find Michelle. Do not call her. You can find Timeka at Bico. You can find me, Mary Inclusive, and thank you all.